Okay, it is 4 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the January 26th meeting to order with a roll call, please.
Sorry, Mayor. Mayor Householder.
Here.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Here.
Commissioner Crawford.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Hardy.
Here. At this time, all who are able, if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This takes us to the awards and proclamations part of our meeting.
Item 3.1, the week of January 26th through 31st, 2015 is Kansas Day 2015 in the city of Salina. Tammy Jarvis, owner of Ad Astra Books and Coffee House, will read the proclamation.
Ms. Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Whereas January 29th, 2015 marks the 154th birthday of the great state of Kansas, and whereas we as Kansans live our lives through our state motto, Ad Astra per aspera, to the stars through difficulty, and whereas we as Salinans honor our local heritage and history and strive for connectedness through community, I therefore now, Aaron Householder, as Mayor of Salina, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the City of Salina, declare Santa Fe Avenue renamed Ad Astra Avenue for the week of January 26th through January 31st, 2015. Oh, do I read the bottom too? Do I keep going?
If you want, yeah.
In witness whereof I set my hand and caused to be affixed the great seal of the City of Salina on this 26th day of January in the year 2015.
There you go. Great. Well, we actually discussed this earlier, and
We
she was a
did.
little confused whether she thought it seemed a little weird reading. Now, therefore, I Aaron Householder, which it's hard enough for me to say that, let alone somebody else. But
I told him he might want to do that more often, have
Yeah,
somebody
right.
else say I, therefore.
yeah, it might get you a cup of coffee. Well, tell me, what events do you have planned down there this week?
We have a whole week of events, actually. Our normal weekly events have sort of been transformed this week into Kansas editions. Our game night tomorrow night is Kansas Trivia, hosted by Cash Hollister. Old Vinyl Night on Wednesday is going to be all about sort of Kansas musicians and Kansas history of music. Thursday is our regular Craig Plotner, who is a local guy. And Saturday is our big sort of finale show. The DeVales from Wichita are going to be here. We're also doing a contest through the week. It's a little bit like a pub crawl, but we have these little postcards, and you go. There's 10 participating places, all of the bars downtown and all of the restaurants downtown, and you go and get your, present your card to your server, you get your card marked, you go to 7 or more places, you bring your cards back to me, and you get entered in a fabulous prize package drawing. So
Great,
Yeah.
great. First year doing it?
yes,
Well-
first year. And like the big thing is we just kind of want to get, we're trying to rename the entire street, so we figured we better try to involve more people than just us. So
There you
I
go.
like that.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
It's a good start. I wonder if the tickets that people receive down there will say Ad Astra, the 400 block of Ad Astra or whatever. You think they'll change for that? All right. Well, great. Well, hopefully the first of many. If you come up, I've got your signed
Okay.
proclamation.
Hey, one thing while we're doing it, while you're doing that, is I know that there's a sort of birthday celebration at the museum. Can we get some details on that?
The details on that are Brad the 31st on Saturday
From 1 to 3.
from 1 to 3. Yeah.
All week long tours with events.
Right. Bringing in third graders, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm helping
Greater in Central Kansas.
in Central Kansas. I'm helping to shuck corn on Thursday. So.
All right.
Well, I know what a good time that can be. So. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Appreciate
Yep,
it.
thank you, guys.
Great. Lots of fun. Okay. This will take us to the Citizens Forum part of the meeting. This is an opportunity for anyone to come up and speak regarding an item that they want to bring to the City Commission's attention that is not on today's agenda. You'll, of course, have time to talk about that issue, those issues at that time. And no one? Okay, great. That'll move us on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of January 12, 2015.
Well, is there an item on the consent agenda that anyone would like to either modify? If not, I would accept a motion to accept, I guess, just the minutes as they're presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion carries 5-0, and that'll move us on to administration.
Item 7.1, acceptance of a permanent public trail easement for a multi-use trail along the south side of Lakewood Middle School property as part of the Safe Routes to School program.
Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a easement on the Lakewood School property. John is pulling it up on the screen over there. It follows the north side of their old river channel along the Lakewood Middle School area from Lakewood Drive over to the refurbished truss bridge there that crosses the river for the middle school. And we applied for this a few years ago in 2013, and we were awarded the funds and signed the contract earlier in 2014. And then it is actually KDOT has to administer and let the project, so it takes a little longer. It's a simple sidewalk project. However, it takes quite a while to get it through the queue in the system, and so we're hoping to get it built this summer. I guess that's the bottom line. Hopefully close to the time school starts, but it may stretch into the fall a little bit. But USD 305 is on board. They had to dedicate an easement for the property there where that red line is. And if you've looked at the exhibit here, it's kind of we follow quite a few, kind of an existing maintenance path that's there on the property. Follows the lay of the land the best we could along the trees and along the back side of the property. So they, at their last board meeting on the 13th, approved this easement and signed it. And so the city has to accept it. So I'll entertain questions.
Great. Any questions for staff? Got an easy day today. Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you.
Anyone from the public here to comment on this issue at all? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Will this be lit at night?
Okay.
No, it will not. It is not a lit, not currently anyway. I mean, there's talk, I guess, eventually as we connect trails and depending on where we want to light them, that could be someday a future possibility. But this one, it's lit right now at the bridge and then at Lakewood Drive, but not in between.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. Anyone from the public here on this? I already asked that. I thought maybe somebody gained some excitement since then and really want to take this on, but seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action.
Mr. Mayor, I move acceptance of a permanent public trail easement for a multi-use trail along the south side of Lakewood Middle School property as part of the Safe Routes to School program.
Second.
Motion is second to accept a permanent public trail easement for multi-use trail along the south side of Lakewood Middle School property as part of the Safe Routes to School program. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Item 7.2, resolution number 15-7171, certifying right-of-way and utility clearance to the Kansas Department of Transportation for Safe Routes to Schools Trail at Lakewood Middle School, City Project number 14-3024.
Mr. Stack.
Back again. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a item that once we acquire the property and get the easement accepted, then we can submit to the Kansas Department of Transportation. There's two documents they require, basically certifying that you have the property or the easement rights to construct the project. And then the second thing is making sure the utilities have been worked with or cooperated with and either have a plan to move if they're in the way, or in this case, we don't have any in this area that we believe are in conflict, so it makes it easy. So we had one property acquisition, which was the previous item, and then no utility conflicts. So this form needs to be signed by, one of them needs to be signed by the mayor, and then I signed one of them, basically just approves. This resolution actually is what KDOT needs, so
Sure.
approve the resolution. I'll stand for questions.
Any questions?
I have a question. I notice you're quite you like to leverage our funds to the max, getting on both KDOT and USD 305 to partner with us on this trail. And so our final cost was something like $8,000 plus a little change.
Right.
And I was just curious, are there other projects in 2014 or that would fall into the same category or that used up the remaining funds for the trail system that we had budgeted for 2014?
No, I don't believe there was. Are you referring to, I think we usually have 40,000
Right.
a year approximately. 2014, I don't believe we did have that, so we could build a bigger project in 2015, basically.
So that money would carry over
I would think so.
from
I mean, we
2014 to
could
2015?
discuss that further, but that's historically, Rod has to fund the CIP and the sub-CIP with the monies each year, and that is something that I think is a possibility, but we can get that approved or get that discussed at the
Yeah,
next CIP meeting.
We need to check to see how it was budgeted, if it's reallocated to something else, or whether or not, I can't remember if it came from the sales tax fund or the general fund. If it's general fund, odds are it may or may not have been reallocated, depends if it was requested.
I was thinking he puts it in the sales tax, but yeah, we didn't say here, but it's usually,
We'll check to make sure.
check.
Just one other question is going to be somewhat redundant. I just realized this is called Safe Routes to School. I'm just thinking of that month in October when it gets dark, I guess, early in the morning, and I get confused. And then another month it's real dark in the evening.
Yeah.
Kids will be taking this route basically as the hypotenuse to get to school from
That's the
Iron
hope.
over to Lakewood.
Did he just say hypotenuse? Is that the first time in your recalled history that a commissioner has said that word? Guys, up in our game here. I'm not sure.
Math major, it's hard. I have to think in those terms. I'm just imagining some sixth grader riding next to all these trees in the park when it's dark.
Dark, yeah.
And I don't know if lighting can be considered as a future actual or even a 60-year-old like me bicycling there when it's dark.
Yeah.
Dan, do you know if lighting is an eligible cost from KDOT for the project? That's probably the first question.
I'll find out.
I know that they title the program, so surely they can consider that. I think
so.
from the afternoon, I wouldn't expect it to be dark when they go home on a typical day. Now, there's a lot of after-hours activities that there could be. Certainly, morning is a concern during certain times of the year consistently. So it's a good question.
Good question, and this is really a route for the school, because there's not a lot of access along Lakewood to the school at this time. You have to almost go all the way up to the bus stop access and kind of meander your way through there. So this will kind of open that up. We'll see how many kids will use it, but I'll ask KDOT to see if lighting is a possibility, to see if that's a funding, and it's something that possibly use the excess funds for. We can see where the bids come in at.
What's the distance again for that, roughly?
1,500 feet.
1,500 feet.
So how would you space lighting if you're going to light it? About every couple hundred feet, 100 feet? Easily probably within every 100 feet, 50, so maybe...
150 is, our street lighting's 150. I'm trying to think, and that's continuous lighting, so.
Okay,
depends
so
on-
10 lights, 10, 12 lights. I don't know what they typically cost. You have to the wiring conduit, wiring source, and the lights themselves, I guess, are going to range from low of maybe $1,000 up to $3,000, and the labor to do that. So 330, you're probably talking $40,000 to $50,000 easily, maybe 60 or more.
Possibly. And
So that would double the cost of the project.
Sure.
if they're Westar lights, it's a different story, so, those are just rentals and.
Does Westar offer a pedestrian option light? They don't, do they? Just have the typical street lights, right?
We can find out. We're putting them on North Ohio, which isn't too far from here, and there's going to be a trail that connects to the north end of that bridge with North Ohio, so there's a way to start looking into that. That would be a
Okay.
possibility.
That probably will throw a loop to KDOT, but we can ask and see where who knows? It might be pretty easy, or it might be more difficult, and we have to come back and have a conversation.
Worth looking into.
Thank
Sure. Anyone else? Just, sorry, one quick question, Dan. At the southern end there, I can't really see, is there a sidewalk? My only concern is will the kids be able, if say a kid comes down Iron Street and wants to get over, I think there's at least a walk lane on one side of those bridges, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
Is there a sidewalk on that left side?
There is on the
Okay,
east side of the bridge. There's not the west, but the east side. There is
Okay.
on that east side. There's a from Iron to the north, and we're connecting into that, so there'll be a continuous trail, at least Iron Street.
Right.
okay, to get in there, okay. Just like I said, I just don't want them walking along the side of the road, and they're going to have to cross at some point, but they got to cross
Yeah.
Ohio and Iron Street to get to the school anyway, so hopefully they,
So the walkway is on the east side of the bridge?
It is.
So they'll have to cross
Correct.
that street once they cross the bridge?
I think we were making that connection, weren't we, when last time we were talking about the Iron Avenue, how it ends at Delaware, and then we kind of have that little,
Got a one
Bit in
block
between.
section there we'd like to tie in, don't we?
yeah.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we're thinking we need to do that this year as well, and then we're actually looking at south of there to Indian Rock Park. There's kind of a gap as well.
Okay,
Indian Rock has our levee trail connection, and so there's a few blocks there. We're looking at a Sunflower Trails grant
yeah,
this year for that. Dion's here, if he was here. There he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he can vouch for that. So it's kind of a group effort, but we're looking to maybe get a three-way connection there to go west or to go south and then north. So
There
we'll
you
have
go.
a pretty good connection.
yeah. Great, okay, thank you.
And
Oh,
if
sorry.
if that doesn't work out with that funding mechanism, we have the sidewalk
Correct.
program too that's specifically geared towards making connections between, I think, uses like this. I think it might be the
Yeah,
an appropriate
yeah,
use
this
of
would,
that.
this would fit the
Let's just fit
criteria.
into that as well.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. Dan, the action that you need, given the question on lighting, I assume you still, from KDOT perspective, need the approval of the resolution?
Correct.
And then, but we can go check and see if there's the ability to amend and bring the lighting into the question?
Yes.
Okay.
We have to authorize the resolution for the right-of-way and utilities. That has to go to them. So that
Okay.
way the project keeps on schedule at this time, but then I'll find out what the lighting
And
questions
it would seem to me to make sense to find out how much use it's getting before we put 50, 60,000 into lighting.
Well, that's kind of where I'm at. I think I'm a little more like maybe lighting down the road. We don't want to tip into the fact that it may not be a safe route to school. We want their 65,000 anyway.
1,500, well, 1,500 feet on a dark road
Yeah.
next to a bunch of trees. Probably not going to have my daughter riding
Confidence.
her bike down
It's a
there.
confidence building course there. Yeah.
Have you guys been on the trails in a lot of cities or communities? I mean, they're typically in this area. They're next to creeks and rivers, and they're
They are.
Dark.
They're
dark.
usually
Yeah.
pretty
They're
dark.
just dark, and
Yeah.
people-
Yeah.
And
They really
there's-
are.
And
Like
then the
them, but they're
$50,000 reason's probably the reason.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it
I'm
doesn't
gonna
take
guess.
long to add up. Lighting gets pretty expensive, so it
Yeah.
is something you can consider. Maybe this, school has an interest in that too, but it is something that if you start lighting the trails, then it gets to be pretty pricey. endeavor.
Right.
But we'll check and just see.
Check and see. Dion did inform me, last year we had the Bill Burke Emergency Access Project. That's what we used the trail funds for last year. That's why we didn't do another project, so that's where those ended up.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right, thank you. Anyone from the public here to comment on part 2 of this project at all? Okay, if not, I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action.
Mr. Mayor, move adoption of resolution number 15-7171, certifying right-of-way and utility clearance to the Kansas Department of Transportation for safe routes to schools. Trail at Lakewood Middle School, city project number 14-3024.
Second.
Motion is second to adopt resolution 15-7171. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion carries 5-0. That'll take us on to development business.
Item 8.1, application M14-23, requesting a review and possible amendment of the major street plan map of the city of the Salina, Kansas Comprehensive Plan to substitute an internally produced functional street classification map that would more clearly define the street classifications in the community than the current major street plan map in the comprehensive plan document. 8.1A, first reading, ordinance number 15-10763.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a collaborative effort between the planning staffs and engineering staffs. After we had a meeting with KDOT, they had a map that came before you before the end of last year about classifying streets for their own funding purposes, but it led us to look at the major street plan map that was in the comprehensive plan and some previous maps that we had been working from. And what we found was the major street plan map that's in the comprehensive plan identifies major and minor collectors, but it doesn't go to additional detail down to the local street level and does not include some streets that we would consider to be collector streets. So as part of our continuing process to try to take these comprehensive plan document maps and make them internally produced so that we can adjust and modify them as conditions change. This is a possible amendment to the comprehensive plan to substitute an internally produced functional classification map that would identify every street segment in the city according to its function. And all of our streets in the city have two functions. One's to move traffic, both pedestrian and vehicular traffic, and they also provide access to abutting property. But we have some types of streets like Ohio Street and South Ninth Street where those two functions are not always compatible, so we're looking at means to reduce or restrict access to those arterial streets. So the map that you have before you, John, if you'd like to go to that, please. This is a proposed classification map, and it has 4 classifications: major arterial, minor arterial, collector, and local. And local streets are essentially any street that is not classified as one of the 3 upper classifications, and the primary purpose of local streets is to provide access to individual properties. But this also serves as a snapshot of how the existing street network functions, but also provides a guide for future improvements based on the classification of segments that might be in need of improvement. So this map will serve as a one-stop shop for all of staff who would use it on a day-to-day administrative basis. It would also be used for a number of policy decisions. How a street is classified would determine what its right-of-way width is going to be for platting, what the street pavement width should be, what the speed limit should be, what its eligibility is for financing construction, whether or not access is controlled, and the planning staff uses it on a daily basis to determine building setbacks. How large a sign a church or school can have is dependent on the classification of street that it's on, and also the size and the setbacks for those signs. And as cases come before the Planning Commission or City Commission, there will always be information provided about what the classification is of a particular street, whether it's a rezoning request or a plat or a plan for a church or school. It is always relevant how that street is classified. So we provided 3 reasons, or 4 reasons on page 3 for why we think this is a candidate to replace the existing map. The existing map doesn't show all collector and local streets. The substitute map would do that. The substitute map would more closely conform to previous classification maps and KDOT's classifications. And having this internally produced will make it easier to update if conditions change or if there's a decision to look at a particular street segment. So the Planning Commission treated this as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. They held a public hearing. There was no public comment. Several planning commissioners had questions which were addressed, and they are recommending that this be adopted as a substitute. And if it does, it will go up as the one and only wall map in our work area that will be referred to by all departments, and it will also be on the city's website and will be used on a daily basis to administer the zoning ordinance. So with that, I'd be open to any questions you might have about the map or individual streets.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Andrew?
Just for those of us that have hard paper copies and then some of them online, how can we get those, our copies updated? Just come by and get a sheet to slip in, or?
Yeah, I think what we would try to do, we're trying to maintain a list. For instance, we have planning commissioners who have 3-ring binders of the comprehensive plan. We're trying to maintain a list of who has those so as we can get those out. The other thing we're trying to do, and it's up in the, John, if you could scroll down. Or is that scroll down at all? Right here.
Okay.
This is anticipating approval of this on second reading next Monday, but this would be the effective date. And what we would see is as this is built on or amended, then there would be underneath that amended on such and such a date. So you would people would be able to know whether they had one that was out of date. But the ones that we would keep as our working wall maps and have on the website would be updated as a classification might change.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you. Anyone from the public care to comment on this? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action.
Mr. Mayor, I move adoption on first reading ordinance number 15-10763. That will suffice. Place of
I'll
reading
second.
all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our executive session appreciates that. So, ordinance number, we have a motion and a second on ordinance number 15-10763. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Item 8.2, first reading, ordinance number 15-10764, formalizing the property tax exemption for Twin Oaks Industries Building Addition located at 2001 West Grand Avenue.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Back in September 2003, the City Commission approved a resolution stating your intent to authorize a property tax exemption for a proposed expansion of the Twin Oaks Industry Facility at 2001 West Grand. And John has that highlighted for you. This is Broadway here, Grand Avenue, and this is a island annexation that was associated with a West Grand water line project out in that area. The addition consisted of a 15,000 square foot addition onto the west side of the building that was used for production, office, training, and also as a FEMA shelter. That project is complete and inspected, and the item before you today is an ordinance that would execute the actual property tax exemption. As we indicated in our report, the final expenditures related to the construction project was a little over $1 million, and there were 9 jobs created during the project period. And under the tax exemption formula that we currently have, that would make this addition eligible for 55% exemption years 1 through 5 and 27.5% in years 6 through 10. That exemption would apply only to the addition itself and not to the remainder of the property. If you were to adopt this ordinance today, then the next step would be to work with the applicant to get a application filed with the Kansas Board of Tax Appeals, and that board would actually implement the tax exemption based on your action today. So if you have any questions, I'd be available for that. We also have Tim Oakes, the building owner and business owner here, if you have any questions of him.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the number of employees.
Oh, okay.
The jobs created, I guess. And it may be for Mr. Oakes, actually, because I was curious, and when you project 4 jobs created, and then it turns out to be 9, I was curious, is that still, that 9 still tied directly to that new construction, or is it a mix of new construction plus the more demand for the business?
It is a result of the project, but not necessarily directly tied. So if you have a business like Great Plains Manufacturing that has multiple businesses and they do a project, the state recognizes that as an increase in the population at that campus, but it doesn't have to be tied to that specific building or that addition. So these are new employees for Twin Oaks Industries at this facility, but not necessarily that they're all working in the addition.
Okay, any other questions? Great. Anything for the applicant at all? Anyone? Any other questions that may pertain? Unless he has something he wants to add or other than that, yeah. Okay, if not, anyone from the public care to comment on this? No? I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve on first reading ordinance number 15-10764, formalizing the property tax exemption for Twin Oaks Industries Incorporated, building addition located at 2001 West Grand Avenue.
Second.
Motion is second to adopt ordinance number 15-10764. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries 5-0. And I believe that takes us to other business. Any other business besides the other business?
Just as a, for those who have followed these things, at our last meeting, we had a discussion on the Lee Building, and we had indicated at that time, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that the applicant get together with staff and go over things. I understand that did happen, and that the applicant, Mr. Forrestal, is working with staff, and that we're not discussing it here isn't that things didn't happen, but that there was just nothing to bring to us. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's nothing to bring to you this week. We anticipate the possibility next week. I will say it's a good opportunity. Staff, because of how quickly this is all materializing, we just had confirmation early this morning of the possibility to go actually visit a facility of a developer that Mr. Forrestal is working with in Lawrence, and to look at their building. And so we're trying to schedule that, or have it scheduled, I think, to be there 1 p.m. tomorrow. The reason I tell you this now is just because, depending on how many of you go, if 3 of the 5 of you end up wishing to go, we're going to set up a van. Your staff members are going for sure because we want to see it. Then we'll notice up a meeting. We typically would notice up ahead of time, but in this case we didn't have confirmation, so that's why we can't do that. So this is an opportunity to let the public know of that possibility, to let them know that we will notice up a meeting if in fact there's a quorum or more that would go. But just to bring that in and mention that.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you to the applicant, too, for getting with you guys and working that out.
Okay.
I move to recess into executive session for 45 minutes to discuss with legal counsel matters subject to the attorney-client privilege for the reason that public discussion of those matters would waive the privilege and adversely affect the city's interest in the matters, and for the purpose of discussing matters pertaining to non-elected city personnel for the reason that public discussion of the matter would violate the privacy rights of the non-elected personnel involved, and to discuss confidential data relating to the financial affairs and trade secrets of a corporation for the reason that public discussion of the information would competitively disadvantage the corporation, and reconvene at about 5:20.
Seems about
Second.
right. Motion is second to move into executive session for 45 minutes for the reasons discussed. Do we anticipate any action after this?
We do not.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. We are in executive session. Thank you.
Directs the Detroit Symphony Orchestra.